The Iberian Peninsula in the 13th century was a patchwork of competing kingdoms, religious struggles, and territorial ambitions. It was a land where Christian monarchs clashed with Muslim rulers and sometimes each other, driven by a vision to consolidate power and expand their dominions. In this tempestuous environment, the Kingdom of Portugal emerged as a distinct entity, carving out its identity under the leadership of ambitious rulers like Afonso III. Yet, behind the crown of the conqueror king, stood a woman whose name has often been overshadowed by the deeds of her husband and son, Beatriz of Castile. Beatriz was no ordinary queen, born out of wedlock to Alfonso X of Castile, a monarch renowned as El Sabio, the Wise, and Mayor Guillén de Guzmán, a noblewoman of great lineage. Beatriz entered a world where legitimacy determined destiny. The illegitimacy of her birth marked her as an outsider in the courtly politics of Castile, but it also forged in her a resilience and diplomatic acumen that would serve her well in her future role as Queen of Portugal. Little did she know that her life would intertwine with the ambitions of Afonso III, whose own path to the Portuguese throne was fraught with intrigue and rebellion. When Afonso III ascended to the throne of Portugal in 1248, the kingdom was still a fledgling state, precariously balancing its Christian identity against the remnants of Islamic rule in the south. The conquest of the Algarve, a region that was both a strategic and symbolic prize, became the cornerstone of his reign. But this victory did not come solely through martial strength. It was cemented through careful diplomacy, a diplomacy that Beatriz, with her Castilian ties, would come to embody. Their marriage in 1253 was more than a union of two individuals. It was a calculated move to align Portugal and Castile against common enemies and to resolve the disputes over the Algarve. Beatriz, though still young, displayed remarkable political instincts. She became not only a queen but also a mediator, bridging the ambitions of two powerful monarchies. In a time when queens were often relegated to the background, Beatriz was a partner in governance, quietly shaping the future of Portugal alongside her husband. As the years passed, Beatriz's influence extended beyond the political arena. She played a pivotal role in the upbringing of her children, most notably their son Denis, who would later become one of Portugal's most celebrated kings. Known as the Poet King, Denis inherited his mother's love of learning and diplomacy, along with his father's determination to strengthen the realm. Beatriz instilled in him the values of justice, cultural patronage, and the delicate art of balancing power with compassion. This is the story of Beatriz of Castile, a queen whose life was defined by courage, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to the stability of her adopted kingdom. It is a tale of alliances forged in the crucible of political necessity, of battles won not just on the battlefield but in the corridors of power, and of a legacy that endured long after her time. Through her journey, we uncover the intricate tapestry of medieval Portugal, a land shaped as much by the determination of its kings as by the quiet strength of its queens. In the pages that follow, we will delve into the life of this remarkable woman, tracing her origins in Castile, her rise to prominence in Portugal, and her lasting impact on the course of Iberian history, from the splendor of royal courts to the harsh realities of medieval politics. Beatriz's story offers a window into a world where power and loyalty were constantly tested, and where one woman's vision helped to shape the destiny of a nation. Beatriz of Castile was born into a world of contradictions, a world where the grandeur of royalty was intertwined with the shadows of personal scandal and political ambition. Her father, Alfonso X of Castile, was a monarch renowned for his intellect and ambition, a man who envisioned himself as both a ruler of men and a philosopher king. Known as El Sabio, or the Wise, Alfonso X cultivated a court that celebrated learning, poetry, and the pursuit of knowledge. Yet, despite his lofty ideals, Alfonso was not immune to the complexities of human relationships, and it was one such relationship that would bring Beatriz into the world. Her mother, Mayor Guillén de Guzmán, was a noblewoman of exceptional lineage and grace. A member of the influential Guzman family, Mayer represented the union of aristocratic power and cultural sophistication. Despite her social standing, her relationship with Alfonso X was unconventional and fraught with challenges. Mayer was not a queen, nor even a legitimate consort in the eyes of the church or the court. Her union with Alfonso was a liaison born of mutual affection rather than political necessity, and it produced a daughter who would carry the burden of her unconventional origins throughout her life. Beatriz was born in 1242, a time when legitimacy was a currency as valuable as gold in the courts of Europe. For a princess born outside the sanctity of marriage, her prospects were uncertain at best. The court of Castile, while vibrant and cultured under Alfonso's rule, was also a hotbed of intrigue, where noble families vied for influence and power. Beatriz's birth added a layer of complexity to this already volatile environment. While Alfonso openly acknowledged her as his daughter and provided her with a noble upbringing, her status as an illegitimate child placed her in a precarious position. Despite these challenges, Beatriz's early years were marked by privilege and opportunity. Her father ensured that she was educated in the traditions of the Castilian court, where she was exposed to the finest minds of the time. Alfonso's court was a beacon of intellectual and artistic activity, attracting scholars, poets, and theologians from across Europe and the Islamic world. It was here that Beatriz developed her keen intellect and appreciation for the arts, traits that would later define her as Queen of Portugal. Her mother, Margarita de Guzman, also played a significant role in shaping her character. Although removed from the political machinations of the court, Mayer instilled in Beatriz a sense of resilience and dignity. She taught her daughter to navigate the delicate balance between power and vulnerability, a skill that Beatriz would carry with her into her later life. As Beatriz grew, her lineage became both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, her connection to Alfonso X provided her with access to the upper echelons of society and the resources necessary for her education and upbringing. On the other hand, her illegitimacy meant that she was often viewed with suspicion and derision by those who sought to undermine her position. This duality would become a defining theme in her life, shaping her worldview and her approach to the challenges she would face as queen. By the time Beatriz reached adolescence, her father's ambitions for Castile had begun to reach their zenith. Alfonso X aspired to claim the title of Holy Roman Emperor, a goal that required him to navigate the labyrinthine politics of Europe. His pursuit of this lofty title consumed much of his energy and resources, leaving the court in a state of flux. For Beatriz, this was a period of uncertainty and adaptation, as the shifting tides of her father's ambitions often dictated the course of her own life. Amid this backdrop of ambition and intrigue, Beatriz's lineage began to take on a new significance. As the daughter of Alfonso X, she became a pawn in the game of dynastic alliances that defined medieval Europe. Her father, despite his affection for her, understood that her marriage could serve as a powerful tool for securing political alliances and consolidating power. This realization marked the beginning of a new chapter in Beatriz's life, one that would ultimately lead her to the court of Portugal and her future husband, Afonso III. The path to this union was not without its complications. Afonso III, who had recently ascended to the throne of Portugal, was already embroiled in a web of personal and political challenges. His first marriage to Matilda II of Boulogne had ended in a contentious annulment, leaving him in search of a new alliance that could bolster his position as king. For Afonso, a marriage to Beatriz represented an opportunity to strengthen ties with Castile and legitimize his claims to the contested region of the Algarve. For Beatriz, the prospect of marrying Afonso III was both an opportunity and a gamble. While the union promised to elevate her status and provide her with a platform to influence the course of history, it also meant leaving behind the familiarity of her father's court and embarking on a journey into the unknown. The court of Portugal, while smaller and less established than that of Castile, offered its own challenges and opportunities. As queen, Beatriz would be tasked with navigating the complex dynamics of a kingdom still in the process of defining itself. Her marriage to Afonso III in 1253 marked the beginning of a partnership that would shape the course of Portuguese history. For Beatriz, it was a chance to prove herself not only as a queen but also as a woman of intelligence and resilience. For Afonso, it was an opportunity to solidify his rule and lay the groundwork for the future of his kingdom. Together, they would confront the challenges of governance, diplomacy, and family, forging a legacy that would endure long after their time. As Beatriz stepped into her role as queen, she brought with her the lessons of her upbringing, the resilience instilled by her mother, the intellectual curiosity nurtured by her father, and the determination forged by her own experiences. These qualities would serve her well as she navigated the complexities of life at the Portuguese court, balancing the demands of her husband's ambitions with her own vision for the future of the kingdom. This is where the story of Beatriz truly begins, not as a footnote in the history of Castile or Portugal, but as a central figure in the unfolding drama of the Iberian Peninsula. From the shadows of her controversial lineage, she would rise to become a queen who left an indelible mark on the course of Portuguese history, shaping the destiny of a kingdom and the legacy of a dynasty. Afonso III's path to the throne of Portugal was neither straightforward nor free of strife. Born the second son of King Afonso II and Queen Urraca of Castile in 1210, Afonso was not initially destined to rule. His elder brother, Sancho II, inherited the throne in 1223, leaving Afonso to carve out his own path as a young nobleman. Like many second sons of medieval royalty, Afonso sought opportunities beyond the immediate sphere of his homeland. His early years were spent in exile in France, where he married Matilda II, Countess of Boulogne, a powerful heiress who brought him influence and wealth in northern Europe. Yet, the political turmoil brewing in Portugal soon disrupted Afonso's seemingly settled life abroad. Sancho II, whose reign had been marred by conflict with the Portuguese clergy and nobility, found himself increasingly isolated. The kingdom was slipping into chaos as discontent among the populace grew. The Pope intervened, issuing a decree in 1245 that effectively deposed Sancho and called upon Afonso to return and restore order. Afonso reluctantly left his life in France, returning to a homeland in turmoil and a kingdom on the brink of collapse. His return to Portugal was both a personal and political gamble. Afonso claimed the title of Defender of the Realm and quickly garnered support from the nobles who had turned against his brother. Yet, his path to power was fraught with moral and familial dilemmas. Sancho, despite his failures as a ruler, was still Afonso's brother. The civil war that ensued pitted the kingdom against itself, and the scars of this conflict would linger long after Afonso ascended the throne in 1248. Following Sancho's death in exile, once crowned, Afonso faced the daunting task of rebuilding a fractured kingdom. His vision was ambitious. He sought not only to restore stability but also to expand Portuguese territory and strengthen its position on the Iberian Peninsula. However, his personal life remained complicated. His marriage to Matilda, which had been politically advantageous during his time in France, now posed a significant obstacle. Matilda's position as a foreign countess with limited ties to Portugal made her an unsuitable queen in the eyes of the Portuguese court. Additionally, the marriage had failed to produce an heir, further weakening her position. Afonso's decision to annul his marriage to Matilda in 1253 was as much a political calculation as it was a personal choice. The annulment, sanctioned by the Church, paved the way for Afonso to seek a new alliance through marriage. His eyes turned to Castile, where his sister Urraca's influence at the court of Alfonso X, the Wise, opened the door to a potential union with the Castilian royal family. It was in this context that Beatriz of Castile entered his life. The union between Afonso and Beatriz was carefully orchestrated. Designed to strengthen the ties between Portugal and Castile, while resolving lingering disputes over the contested region of the Algarve. At the time, the Algarve was a prize of immense strategic and symbolic importance. Situated at the southernmost edge of the Iberian Peninsula, it represented the culmination of the Christian Reconquista against the Moors. Afonso had already achieved military success in securing much of the Algarve, but Castile also laid claim to the region. The marriage between Afonso and Beatriz was a diplomatic masterstroke, aligning the two kingdoms and solidifying Portugal's hold over its southern territories. For Beatriz, this marriage was a defining moment. At just 11 years old, she was thrust into the role of queen in a foreign court, far from the familiarity of her father's kingdom. Yet, her youth belied a precocious intelligence and a deep understanding of the political stakes involved. She quickly adapted to her new surroundings, winning the admiration of the Portuguese court with her grace and composure. More importantly, she brought with her the legitimacy of Castilian support, a critical factor in consolidating Afonso's rule. The early years of their marriage were marked by a sense of renewal and ambition. Afonso's vision for Portugal extended beyond military conquest. He sought to strengthen the kingdom's institutions and lay the groundwork for a stable and prosperous future. Beatriz played a key role in this endeavor, serving not only as queen but also as an advisor and diplomat. Her connection to the Castilian court proved invaluable, enabling her to mediate disputes and foster alliances that bolstered Portugal's position on the Iberian Peninsula. Despite the political success of their union, the personal dynamics between Afonso and Beatriz were complex. Afonso, a man shaped by years of exile and conflict, was pragmatic and determined, qualities that often left little room for sentimentality. Beatriz, on the other hand, brought a youthful optimism and a belief in the power of diplomacy to overcome division. Together, they formed a partnership that balanced Afonso's hard-edged pragmatism with Beatriz's diplomatic finesse, creating a foundation upon which the future of Portugal could be built. One of the most significant achievements of their early reign was the resolution of the Algarve dispute. Through a combination of military strength and diplomatic negotiation, Afonso secured Castilian recognition of Portuguese sovereignty over the region. This victory was not merely territorial. It was symbolic of Portugal's emergence as a sovereign and independent kingdom. Beatriz's role in these negotiations, though often understated, was critical. Her position as a bridge between the two courts allowed her to navigate the delicate balance of power, ensuring a peaceful resolution that benefited both kingdoms. By the mid-1250s, Afonso and Beatriz had established themselves as a formidable royal couple. Their reign was marked by a sense of stability and progress, as Portugal began to recover from the turmoil of the previous decades. Yet, their journey was far from over. The challenges they faced in the years to come would test their resolve and redefine their legacy, both as rulers and as individuals. As Beatriz settled into her role as queen, she began to look toward the future. Her greatest contribution to the kingdom would not be found on the battlefield or in the halls of diplomacy, but in the lives of her children, particularly her eldest son, Denis. Through her guidance and influence, Beatriz would shape the next generation of Portuguese leadership, ensuring that the kingdom she helped to build would endure long after her time. The marriage of Afonso III and Beatriz of Castile in 1253 was far more than a union of two individuals. It was a meticulously crafted alliance designed to navigate the treacherous waters of medieval Iberian politics. For Afonso, the marriage was an essential move to consolidate his claim to the throne, secure Portugal's hold over the Algarve, and establish a lasting peace with Castile. For Beatriz, the match was an opportunity to step into a role that would challenge her intellect and diplomacy. Despite her youth and inexperience, the political stakes surrounding their union were immense. At the time, Portugal and Castile were locked in a tense standoff over the Algarve, a region that symbolized both the triumph of the Christian Reconquista and the ambitions of rival monarchs. Afonso had achieved significant military victories, pushing the Moors out of the Algarve and claiming the territory as Portuguese. However, Castile, under Alfonso X, maintained its own claims to the region, asserting that it should fall under Castilian dominion. The dispute risked escalating into open war, a costly and destabilizing prospect for both kingdoms. The marriage between Afonso and Beatriz was brokered as a solution to this conflict. By aligning himself with the Castilian royal family, Afonso sought to neutralize their claims and solidify Portuguese sovereignty over the Algarve. The arrangement was as much a diplomatic negotiation as it was a marital contract. Beatriz, as the acknowledged daughter of Alfonso X, brought with her the promise of Castilian recognition of Portuguese gains in the south, along with the prospect of an enduring alliance between the two kingdoms. Despite its political underpinnings, the marriage quickly proved to be a genuine partnership. Beatriz, though only a child at the time of her marriage, demonstrated remarkable poise and intelligence. Her upbringing in the sophisticated court of Castile had prepared her for the challenges of royal life, instilling in her a deep understanding of diplomacy and the intricacies of governance. As she matured, she became an active participant in Afonso's reign, advising him on matters of state and serving as a vital link between Portugal and Castile. The early years of their marriage were marked by significant accomplishments. Afonso, with Beatriz's support, negotiated a series of agreements that formalized Castilian recognition of Portuguese sovereignty over the Algarve. These negotiations required delicate diplomacy, as they involved reconciling the ambitions of two powerful monarchs while maintaining the balance of power in the region. Beatriz played a key role in these discussions, leveraging her familial ties and diplomatic acumen to foster trust and cooperation between the two courts. The marriage also brought stability to the Portuguese court, which had been unsettled by the annulment of Afonso's first marriage to Matilda of Boulogne. Beatriz's presence as queen helped to legitimize Afonso's rule, particularly among the Portuguese nobility, who viewed her Castilian lineage as a valuable asset. Her ability to navigate the complexities of court politics earned her the respect of both the nobility and the clergy, further strengthening her position. Beyond her political contributions, Beatriz brought a sense of cultural refinement to the Portuguese court. Influenced by the intellectual and artistic traditions of Castile, she encouraged the patronage of scholars, poets, and theologians. Her presence helped to elevate the cultural life of Portugal, laying the groundwork for the flourishing of the arts and learning that would define the reign of her son, Denis. Through her efforts, the court of Afonso III became a center of cultural exchange, where the traditions of Portugal and Castile mingled to create a uniquely Iberian identity. Despite the successes of their partnership, Afonso and Beatriz faced significant challenges. The integration of the Algarve into the Portuguese kingdom was a complex and often contentious process, requiring careful management of local governance and the establishment of Portuguese authority in a region with a diverse population. Afonso relied on Beatriz to help navigate these challenges, using her diplomatic skills to mediate disputes and build bridges between the various factions within the kingdom. As their marriage progressed, Beatriz began to take on a more prominent role in the governance of the kingdom. She served as an advisor to Afonso, offering insights on matters ranging from foreign policy to domestic administration. Her influence extended to the church, where she played a key role in securing the support of the clergy for Afonso's policies. Through her efforts, Beatriz helped to lay the foundation for a more stable and prosperous Portugal, one that could withstand the challenges of the turbulent 13th century. The union of Afonso and Beatriz also had profound implications for the future of Portugal. Their marriage produced several children, most notably their eldest son, Denis. From an early age, Denis showed promise as a future ruler, displaying the intelligence and determination that would later earn him the title of the Poet King. Beatriz played a central role in his upbringing, instilling in him the values of justice, diplomacy, and cultural patronage that would define his reign. As Afonso and Beatriz worked together to strengthen their kingdom, they also forged a personal bond that transcended the political calculations of their marriage. Their partnership was built on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future of Portugal. Beatriz's intelligence and charm complemented Afonso's pragmatism and determination, creating a dynamic that allowed them to navigate the challenges of their reign with confidence and resolve. By the end of the 1250s, the marriage of Afonso III and Beatriz of Castile had become a cornerstone of Portuguese stability and growth. Their union had resolved the dispute over the Algarve, strengthened ties with Castile, and laid the groundwork for a cultural and political renaissance that would shape the future of the kingdom. As they looked ahead to the challenges of the coming decades, Afonso and Beatriz knew that their greatest legacy would not be found in the treaties they negotiated or the territories they conquered, but in the enduring strength of the kingdom they built together. The conquest of Algarve was not merely a military achievement. It was the defining event of Afonso III's reign and a cornerstone of Portugal's territorial consolidation. It symbolized the culmination of the Christian Reconquista in the Iberian Peninsula and established Portugal's southern border as we know it today. For Afonso and Beatriz, the integration of Algarve into the kingdom was both a personal triumph and a diplomatic masterstroke that reinforced their legacy as sovereigns who shaped Portugal's destiny. Algarve, the sun-soaked region at the southern edge of the Iberian Peninsula, had been a stronghold of the Moors since the 8th century. Its fertile lands, strategic harbors, and cultural vibrancy made it a coveted prize for Christian rulers during the Reconquista. By the mid-13th century, Afonso III saw an opportunity to claim the region for Portugal, both as a strategic asset and as a demonstration of his kingdom's rising power. However, this ambition came with a significant challenge. Castile also laid claim to Algarve, arguing that it should fall under their dominion as part of their broader territorial ambitions. The campaign to conquer Algarve began in earnest during Afonso III's early reign, building on the military successes of his predecessor and father, Afonso II, and leveraging his own alliances with local Christian leaders. Afonso III launched a series of decisive military campaigns against the remaining Moorish strongholds in the region. By 1249, his forces had successfully captured key cities, including Faro, Silves, and Albufeira, marking the complete expulsion of the Moors from Algarve. This victory was celebrated as a monumental achievement, solidifying Afonso's reputation as a capable and determined ruler. Yet, while the military conquest was a clear victory, the political situation remained precarious. Castile, under the ambitious Alfonso X, continued to assert its claim to Algarve, viewing the region as a rightful part of its dominion. The dispute threatened to escalate into open conflict, jeopardizing the stability of both kingdoms. For Afonso III, securing Portuguese sovereignty over Algarve required not only military strength but also astute diplomacy. It was in this arena that Beatriz of Castile played a pivotal role. Beatriz's unique position as both the daughter of Alfonso X and the Queen of Portugal allowed her to act as a mediator between the two kingdoms. Despite her youth, she demonstrated remarkable diplomatic skill, navigating the delicate balance of power between her husband and her father. Beatriz understood that the resolution of the Algarve dispute required more than treaties. It required trust, respect, and a shared vision for the future of the Iberian Peninsula. One of the most significant diplomatic achievements during this period was the Treaty of Badajoz in 1267. This agreement formally recognized Portuguese sovereignty over Algarve while granting Castile certain symbolic concessions to maintain its honor. The treaty was a testament to Beatriz's influence, as her efforts to foster dialogue and mutual understanding between the two courts were instrumental in its negotiation. For Afonso III, the treaty marked the culmination of his efforts to consolidate Portugal's borders and secure its position as an independent kingdom. The integration of Algarve into Portugal posed new challenges for Afonso and Beatriz. The region's population was diverse, consisting of Christians, Muslims, and Jews who had lived under Moorish rule for centuries. Afonso adopted a pragmatic approach to governance, implementing policies that sought to integrate the region's diverse communities into the Portuguese kingdom. Beatriz, with her understanding of Castilian and Moorish cultures, played a supportive role in these efforts, advocating for policies that promoted coexistence and cultural exchange. Under their rule, Algarve began to flourish as a vital part of the Portuguese kingdom. The region's harbors became hubs of maritime trade, connecting Portugal to the wider Mediterranean world. Its fertile lands contributed to the kingdom's agricultural wealth, while its cities became centers of cultural and intellectual activity. Beatriz, drawing on her upbringing in the sophisticated court of Castile, encouraged the patronage of scholars, poets, and artists in Algarve, helping to transform it into a beacon of cultural vibrancy. The conquest and integration of Algarve also had profound implications for Portugal's identity as a nation. For the first time, the kingdom's borders stretched from the rugged mountains of the north to the sunlit shores of the south, encompassing a diverse range of landscapes, peoples, and cultures. This geographical and cultural diversity became a defining feature of Portugal, shaping its history and character for centuries to come. Despite these achievements, the conquest of Algarve was not without its critics. Some members of the Portuguese nobility questioned the resources devoted to the campaign, while others expressed concerns about the integration of a region with a predominantly non-Christian population. Afonso and Beatriz faced these challenges with determination, working tirelessly to unify their kingdom and address the concerns of their subjects. For Beatriz, the conquest of Algarve was a defining moment in her journey as queen. It was an opportunity to demonstrate her diplomatic prowess and her commitment to the kingdom she had come to call home. Her efforts to secure peace and stability in Algarve reflected her broader vision for Portugal as a kingdom where diverse cultures could coexist and thrive. As the dust settled on the conquest of Algarve, Afonso and Beatriz turned their attention to the future. Their focus shifted to strengthening the institutions of the kingdom, fostering economic growth, and preparing their children to inherit the legacy they had built. For Beatriz, this meant ensuring that her son, Denis, would be equipped to rule a kingdom that was now more diverse, prosperous, and united than ever before. The conquest of Algarve was more than a territorial victory. It was a turning point in the history of Portugal. It marked the emergence of a kingdom that was no longer defined solely by its struggles against external enemies, but by its ability to integrate and govern a diverse and dynamic realm. For Afonso and Beatriz, it was a shared triumph that showcased the power of partnership, vision, and diplomacy, a legacy that would endure long after their reign. As Queen of Portugal, Beatriz of Castile demonstrated a quiet but profound influence on the governance of the kingdom. While Afonso III commanded the battlefield and negotiated treaties, Beatriz operated in the background, ensuring that Portugal's foundations were stable, its alliances intact, and its people united under a shared vision for the future. Her role in governance was not ceremonial. It was integral to the success and stability of Afonso's reign. Beatriz brought with her a wealth of diplomatic acumen, honed during her years at the Castilian court under the tutelage of her father, Alfonso X. She understood the power dynamics of the Iberian Peninsula better than most and was adept at navigating the complex relationships between Portugal, Castile, and the neighboring kingdoms. Her insights were invaluable to Afonso, particularly as he sought to consolidate the gains from the conquest of Algarve and manage Portugal's expanding role in Iberian politics. One of Beatriz's most significant contributions was her ability to foster and maintain strong ties with Castile. Her position as the daughter of Alfonso X and her marriage to Afonso III gave her a unique ability to mediate disputes and facilitate dialogue between the two kingdoms. The Treaty of Badajoz in 1267, which formally recognized Portuguese sovereignty over Algarve, was a testament to her diplomatic skill and her capacity to build trust between rival courts. Even after the treaty, Beatriz continued to act as a bridge between Portugal and Castile, ensuring that the peace endured and that relations remained cordial. Beatriz's influence extended beyond diplomacy. Within Portugal, she worked alongside Afonso to strengthen the kingdom's institutions and promote good governance. Her upbringing in a court that valued learning and intellectual pursuits shaped her approach to leadership. She encouraged the establishment of laws and policies that reflected a sense of justice and fairness, particularly in the treatment of the kingdom's diverse populations. In regions like Algarve, where Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived side by side, Beatriz advocated for policies that promoted coexistence and stability. Her commitment to justice was also evident in her support for the clergy, who played a central role in medieval governance. Beatriz worked to strengthen the relationship between the crown and the Catholic Church, recognizing its importance as both a spiritual and political force in the kingdom. She supported the founding and maintenance of monasteries, which not only served religious purposes but also provided education, care for the poor, and a sense of order in rural areas. Her efforts to foster a strong alliance with the Church helped to legitimize Afonso's rule and ensure the loyalty of a key pillar of medieval society. Beatriz's role in governance was also deeply personal. As queen, she understood the importance of setting an example for the people. She carried herself with grace and dignity, embodying the values of compassion, wisdom, and humility. Her presence at court served as a stabilizing force, particularly during times of uncertainty or conflict. Nobles and commoners alike looked to her as a symbol of unity and continuity, a reminder of the shared identity that bound the kingdom together. One of the most profound aspects of Beatriz's influence was her role as a mother and mentor. She recognized that her greatest legacy would be the children she raised, particularly her son Denis, who was destined to inherit the throne. Beatriz was deeply involved in Denis's education, ensuring that he received a well-rounded upbringing that emphasized both intellectual and moral development. She instilled in him a sense of duty and a commitment to justice, qualities that would later define his reign as one of Portugal's most celebrated kings. Under Beatriz's guidance, Denis was exposed to the cultural and intellectual traditions of both Portugal and Castile. He learned the importance of diplomacy and negotiation, skills that would serve him well as he worked to strengthen Portugal's position in the Iberian Peninsula. Beatriz's influence on her son extended to his love of learning and the arts. Denis would go on to become known as the Poet King, a ruler who championed cultural and literary pursuits alongside political and economic reforms. While her contributions to governance were significant, Beatriz often worked in the shadows, allowing Afonso to take the spotlight as king. This was not out of deference or submission, but out of a recognition of the political realities of her time. As a queen consort, Beatriz understood that her power came from her ability to influence and advise, rather than from holding direct authority. Her subtle approach allowed her to wield significant influence without challenging the traditional roles and expectations of medieval queenship. As the years passed, Beatriz's role in governance became increasingly critical. Afonso, though a capable ruler, relied on her counsel and support, particularly as the kingdom faced new challenges. Whether it was mediating disputes among the nobility, negotiating alliances, or addressing the needs of the kingdom's diverse populations, Beatriz was a constant presence, guiding Portugal through its growing pains as a unified and independent kingdom. By the time Afonso and Beatriz's reign entered its later years, the foundations they had built were firmly in place. The kingdom was more stable, its borders secure, and its institutions strengthened. Beatriz's role in these achievements, though often overshadowed by her husband's military and diplomatic exploits, was undeniable. Her vision, wisdom, and quiet strength had shaped Portugal in ways that would endure long after her time. As Beatriz looked to the future, her focus turned increasingly toward her children and the legacy they would carry forward. She understood that the stability and prosperity of Portugal depended on the next generation of leaders, and she was determined to prepare them for the challenges ahead. For Beatriz, governance was not just about the present. It was about ensuring a future where Portugal could thrive as a kingdom united by shared purpose and vision. For Beatriz of Castile, motherhood was more than a personal role, it was a political and moral calling. She understood that the future stability of Portugal rested on the shoulders of her children, the infantes and infantas, who would inherit the kingdom she and Afonso III had worked so tirelessly to strengthen. Among her children, one stood out above all: Denis, the boy who would one day rule Portugal as King Denis I, the poet king. Through her influence as a mother, mentor, and queen, Beatriz laid the groundwork for a dynasty that would guide Portugal into a new era of prosperity and cultural flourishing. Beatriz bore at least 8 children, including Denis, Afonso, and several daughters who would form advantageous marriages with European nobility. Each of her children was a reflection of the union between their parents. They inherited Afonso's pragmatism and determination alongside Beatriz's intelligence and diplomatic finesse. Beatriz was deeply invested in their upbringing, recognizing that their education and values would shape not only their own lives but the destiny of Portugal itself. Denis, born in 1261, was Beatriz's first son and heir apparent. From the moment of his birth, his future was steeped in expectation. Afonso and Beatriz saw in him the promise of a king who could consolidate their legacy and guide Portugal into a period of peace and prosperity. Beatriz took a hands-on approach to his education, ensuring that he received a broad and rigorous training. She emphasized the importance of governance, diplomacy, and cultural refinement, instilling in Denis a love of learning that would later define his reign. In addition to traditional training in statesmanship, Denis was exposed to the intellectual and artistic traditions of both Portugal and Castile. Beatriz, who had grown up in a court renowned for its cultural sophistication, introduced her son to poetry, music, and philosophy. She believed that a king should not only be a warrior and a ruler but also a patron of the arts, someone who could inspire his people through culture and creativity. Under her guidance, Denis developed a deep appreciation for literature and the written word, a passion that would later earn him the title of the Poet King. Beatriz also sought to instill in her children a sense of justice and compassion. She taught them that true leadership required not just strength and strategy but also empathy and fairness. Her lessons left a lasting impression on Denis, who would later become known for his progressive reforms and efforts to promote the welfare of his people. As king, Denis enacted laws to protect the peasantry, expanded agricultural development, and worked to strengthen the Portuguese economy, reflecting the values his mother had imparted to him. Beyond Denis, Beatriz's influence extended to her other children, particularly her daughters. She carefully arranged their marriages to forge alliances with powerful European families, strengthening Portugal's position on the international stage. These alliances not only secured Portugal's borders but also enhanced its reputation as a kingdom of growing influence and sophistication. Beatriz's ability to navigate the complexities of dynastic politics ensured that her children would play key roles in shaping the future of Europe. As her children grew, Beatriz continued to guide them, offering counsel and support as they navigated the challenges of royal life. Her relationship with Denis was particularly close. Even as he matured into a capable ruler, he continued to seek her advice and perspective. Beatriz's wisdom and experience were invaluable to Denis as he prepared to take the throne, ensuring a seamless transition of power when the time came. Tragedy, however, was never far from the lives of medieval royalty. Beatriz experienced the pain of losing some of her children to illness and other misfortunes, a stark reminder of the fragility of life in the 13th century. Yet, even in the face of loss, she remained steadfast, drawing strength from her faith and her commitment to the future of her family and kingdom. As Afonso III's reign entered its final years, Beatriz took on an increasingly prominent role in ensuring the stability of the dynasty. She worked tirelessly to maintain unity among her children and to prepare Denis for the responsibilities of kingship. Her efforts were not in vain. By the time of Afonso's death in 1279, Denis was ready to assume the throne, equipped with the knowledge, values, and vision his mother had instilled in him. Beatriz's legacy as a mother was not limited to her children. It extended to the Kingdom of Portugal itself. Through her guidance and influence, She helped to shape a new generation of leaders who would carry forward the work she and Afonso had begun. Her emphasis on education, justice, and cultural patronage set the stage for a period of unprecedented growth and stability in Portugal, ensuring that her impact would be felt long after her time. In the years to come, Denis would build on his mother's foundation, transforming Portugal into a thriving and culturally rich kingdom. His reign would be celebrated as one of the most illustrious in Portuguese history, a testament to the values and vision Beatriz had imparted to him. As a mother, queen, and mentor, Beatriz's influence was profound, shaping not only the lives of her children but the destiny of an entire nation. As Queen of Portugal, Beatriz of Castile understood the power of culture and faith as tools to unify a kingdom and inspire its people. Her contributions to the cultural and religious landscape of Portugal were profound, reflecting her upbringing in the sophisticated court of Castile and her vision for a more enlightened and cohesive society. Through her patronage of the arts, her support for the Catholic Church, and her encouragement of intellectual pursuits, Beatriz helped to shape Portugal into a kingdom that valued both spiritual devotion and cultural achievement. Beatriz's interest in culture and learning was a product of her formative years at the court of her father, Alfonso X of Castile. Known as El Sabio, the Wise, Alfonso cultivated a court renowned for its intellectual and artistic pursuits. Scholars, poets, and musicians from across Europe and the Islamic world gathered at his court, creating a vibrant atmosphere of cross-cultural exchange. Beatriz brought this appreciation for knowledge and creativity with her to Portugal, where she sought to establish a similar environment of cultural enrichment. One of Beatriz's key contributions was her patronage of religious institutions. The Catholic Church was a cornerstone of medieval society, serving not only as a spiritual authority but also as a center for education and social welfare. Beatriz supported the construction and maintenance of monasteries, churches, and cathedrals across Portugal, recognizing their importance in fostering a sense of community and devotion among the people. These institutions also served as hubs of learning, where monks and scholars preserved and disseminated knowledge. Beatriz's support for the church was not merely symbolic, it was deeply personal. Her faith was a guiding force in her life, and she sought to use her position as queen to promote the values of compassion, charity, and justice. She encouraged the establishment of hospitals and charitable organizations affiliated with the church, providing care for the poor, the sick, and the vulnerable. These efforts reflected her belief in the moral responsibility of the monarchy to serve its people and uphold Christian principles. In addition to her religious patronage, Beatriz was a champion of the arts and literature. Drawing on her experiences in Castile, she encouraged the creation of poetry, music, and visual art that celebrated the cultural heritage of Portugal while also embracing new influences. Her court became a gathering place for poets and musicians, fostering a flourishing of creativity that would continue into the reign of her son, Denis. Beatriz's influence on the arts was particularly evident in her encouragement of literary pursuits. While much of medieval Europe remained illiterate, the courts of Portugal and Castile were exceptional in their support for written works. Beatriz recognized the power of literature to inspire and educate, and she supported the production of manuscripts that preserved the history, culture, and religious traditions of the kingdom. This emphasis on learning would later be reflected in the literary achievements of her son Denis, who became one of the most celebrated poet kings in European history. Another important aspect of Beatriz's cultural contributions was her role in fostering cross-cultural dialogue. Portugal, situated at the crossroads of Christian Europe and the Islamic world, was a land of diverse influences. Beatriz embraced this diversity, encouraging the exchange of ideas and traditions between different cultures and faiths. This openness to cultural exchange enriched Portuguese society, laying the groundwork for the kingdom's later achievements in exploration and global trade. One of the most enduring legacies of Beatriz's patronage was the way it strengthened the connection between the monarchy and the church. by supporting religious institutions and aligning the crown with the values of faith and charity. Beatriz helped to legitimize the rule of Afonso III and ensure the loyalty of the clergy. This alliance was crucial in maintaining stability during a time of significant political and social change. As Beatriz's influence grew, so too did her reputation as a queen who valued knowledge, creativity, and faith. Her court became a beacon of cultural and spiritual enrichment, inspiring those who came into contact with her to strive for higher ideals. This legacy was carried forward by her children, particularly Denis, who inherited his mother's passion for learning and the arts. Beatriz's cultural and religious patronage was not without its challenges. The resources required to support these endeavors often drew criticism from segments of the nobility, who prioritized military and territorial concerns. Yet, Beatriz remained steadfast in her belief that a kingdom's strength was not measured solely by its armies or borders, but by the values it upheld and the legacy it created for future generations. By the end of her life, Beatriz had transformed the cultural and religious landscape of Portugal, leaving a lasting imprint on the kingdom she had adopted as her own. Her support for the arts, her dedication to faith, and her commitment to the welfare of her people set a standard for queenship that would inspire those who came after her. Through her vision and efforts, Beatriz ensured that Portugal would be remembered not only for its military conquests, but also for its contributions to the spiritual and cultural heritage of Europe. Denis, the eldest son of Afonso III and Beatriz of Castile, was born into a world shaped by the ambitions and achievements of his parents. From the moment of his birth in 1261, he was destined for greatness, but it was the influence of his mother, Beatriz, that transformed him from a potential ruler into one of Portugal's most celebrated kings. Known to history as the Poet King and the Farmer King, Denis left a legacy of cultural, economic, and political reform that would elevate Portugal to new heights. Beatriz recognized Denis's potential early on and took a leading role in his education. As a queen who valued intellect and diplomacy, she ensured her son received a comprehensive education that combined the traditions of Portugal and Castile. Denis studied statecraft, history, and law under some of the most learned scholars of the time. Yet, his education was not confined to governance. Beatriz, who had grown up surrounded by the intellectual and artistic vibrancy of Alfonso X's court, exposed Denis to the arts, particularly literature and poetry, which would become central to his identity as king. Beatriz's influence on Denis extended beyond his formal education. She instilled in him a deep appreciation for the value of justice and fairness. Beatriz often emphasized the moral responsibilities of a ruler, teaching Denis that the welfare of his subjects was paramount. These lessons would later define his reign, as Denis sought to balance the demands of the nobility with the needs of the common people. Denis's rise to power began in 1279, following the death of his father, Afonso III. At just 18 years old, Denis faced the daunting task of leading a kingdom that had undergone significant transformation during his parents' reign. The consolidation of Algarve, the strengthening of Portugal's borders, and the establishment of alliances with neighboring kingdoms had set the stage for stability. But it was up to Denis to build upon this foundation and guide Portugal into a new era. One of Denis's first priorities as king was to strengthen the kingdom's economy. Influenced by his mother's emphasis on governance and pragmatism, Denis implemented reforms that improved agricultural production and expanded trade. He established policies to protect the peasantry, ensuring they had access to land and resources to cultivate crops. This earned him the title the Farmer King, reflecting his commitment to the prosperity of Portugal's rural communities. Under Denis's reign, Portugal's maritime ambitions also began to take shape. Recognizing the importance of trade and exploration, he invested in the development of the kingdom's ports and naval infrastructure. These efforts laid the groundwork for Portugal's later achievements as a global maritime power, setting the stage for the age of exploration in the 15th century. while Denis was focused on economic and political reforms. His passion for the arts and culture remained a defining aspect of his character. He was a prolific poet, composing works in both Galician Portuguese and Castilian that celebrated themes of love, nature, and chivalry. His court became a center for literary and artistic expression, attracting poets, musicians, and scholars from across Iberia. Denis's literary achievements reflected the influence of his mother, Beatriz, who had instilled in him a love of learning and a belief in the transformative power of culture. Denis's reign also saw significant developments in law and governance. Drawing on the lessons imparted by Beatriz, he worked to strengthen the legal system and ensure the fair administration of justice. Denis codified laws that protected the rights of his subjects, including provisions for the poor and marginalized. He also established the first Portuguese university in Lisbon in 1290, fulfilling his mother's vision of a kingdom that valued education and intellectual achievement. The relationship between Denis and Beatriz remained close throughout his reign. Even as he matured into a capable ruler, Denis continued to seek his mother's counsel, recognizing the wisdom and experience she brought to the challenges of kingship. Beatriz, in turn, took pride in her son's accomplishments, seeing in him the realization of the values and aspirations she had nurtured. Yet, Denis's reign was not without challenges. His commitment to justice and reform often brought him into conflict with the nobility, who resisted efforts to curtail their power. Denis's ability to navigate these tensions, balancing the interests of different factions, was a testament to the diplomatic skills he had inherited from his mother. Beatriz, who had spent her life mediating between Portugal and Castile, served as a model for Denis as he worked to maintain unity within his kingdom. Denis's personal life also reflected the complexity of his role as king. His marriage to Elizabeth of Aragon, later canonized as Saint Elizabeth, was a union that mirrored his parents in its blend of political strategy and personal compatibility. Like Beatriz, Elizabeth played an active role in governance and supported Denis in his efforts to strengthen the kingdom. Together, they formed a partnership that echoed the dynamic between Afonso III and Beatriz, continuing the legacy of strong and capable rulers who valued collaboration and mutual respect. As Denis's reign progressed, his contributions to Portugal's cultural and political development became increasingly evident. He was not only a king but also a poet, a reformer, and a patron of the arts, a multifaceted leader whose legacy was deeply rooted in the lessons and values imparted by Beatriz. Her influence was evident in his dedication to justice, his support for education, and his commitment to fostering a kingdom where culture and intellect thrived alongside economic and political stability. By the time Denis's reign ended in 1325, he had transformed Portugal into a more cohesive and prosperous kingdom, one that was prepared to take its place on the global stage. His achievements as the poet king and the farmer king were a testament to the enduring impact of Beatriz's guidance and vision. Through her influence, Denis had become a ruler who embodied the ideals of wisdom, compassion, and creativity, a legacy that would inspire future generations of Portuguese leaders. As Beatriz reflected on her son's accomplishments, she saw the fulfillment of her life's work. Her role as a mother, queen, and mentor had shaped Denis into the leader Portugal needed, and her contributions to his education and upbringing had left an indelible mark on the kingdom's history. Beatriz's influence on Denis and his reign was a testament to the power of quiet strength and steadfast devotion, a reminder that the most profound legacies are often those built in partnership and nurtured over time. As the years unfolded, Beatriz of Castile's role in the Portuguese court evolved. Her initial years as a young queen navigating a foreign kingdom had given way to a legacy of wisdom and quiet strength. By the time her son Denis firmly held the reins of power, Beatriz had transitioned into the role of an elder stateswoman, providing guidance not through force but through the subtlety of influence. It was during this period that her greatest impact as a queen, mother, and unifier truly came into focus. Beatrice's influence had always been characterized by her ability to mediate and reconcile. Throughout her life, she had been a bridge between cultures, nations, and even generations. Born into the sophisticated Castilian court of her father, Alfonso X, she brought with her an innate understanding of diplomacy and the art of compromise. These qualities became invaluable during the latter years of Afonso III's reign and the early years of Denis's rule, where political tensions and courtly rivalries required careful navigation. One of Beatrice's most enduring contributions during this time was her effort to maintain unity within the royal family. Dynastic disputes were a persistent challenge for medieval kingdoms, where rivalries between siblings or competing claims could quickly spiral into civil strife. Beatrice, having witnessed the turmoil that plagued her father's court in Castile, was determined to prevent similar discord in Portugal. She worked tirelessly to foster a sense of solidarity among her children, using her influence to mediate disputes and promote reconciliation. Her most significant challenge in this regard came during the early years of Denis's reign, when tensions arose between Denis and his younger brother, Afonso, dissatisfied with his share of inheritance and his lack of political power, began to agitate for greater autonomy. This conflict threatened to destabilize the kingdom, as Afonso's grievances gained support among certain factions of the nobility. Beatrice, recognizing the danger, stepped in as a mediator, using her position as their mother to appeal to both sides. Through a combination of diplomacy and personal intervention, Beatrice was able to defuse the situation. She reminded her sons of their shared duty to the kingdom and their responsibility to honor the legacy of their father. Her efforts helped to prevent the conflict from escalating into open rebellion, preserving the stability of Denis's reign and ensuring that Portugal remained unified during a critical period of consolidation. Beatrice's role as a mediator extended beyond her family. She continued to act as a bridge between Portugal and Castile, leveraging her ties to the Castilian court to maintain peace and foster collaboration. Her correspondence with her Castilian relatives, including her father Alfonso X and her half-brother Sancho IV, reflected her commitment to diplomacy and her belief in the power of dialogue to resolve disputes. Even as her physical presence at court became less prominent, her influence in matters of foreign policy remained significant. Within Portugal, Beatrice's quiet strength was also evident in her support for the church. She maintained close relationships with key figures in the clergy, recognizing their importance as both spiritual leaders and political allies. Her efforts to strengthen the ties between the crown and the church were particularly important during periods of social and economic upheaval, where the church played a vital role in providing stability and support for the population. Beatrice's influence was felt most deeply in the realm of justice and governance. Her earlier efforts to instill a sense of fairness and compassion in Denis had borne fruit, as his reign became known for its legal reforms and protection of the common people. Beatrice's own involvement in these efforts was subtle but significant. She continued to offer advice and guidance, drawing on her experiences as queen consort to help Denis navigate the challenges of leadership. As the years passed, Beatrice's role shifted from active participant to revered matriarch. Her presence at court became less about direct involvement in governance and more about offering a moral and symbolic anchor for the royal family and the kingdom. She was a living reminder of the values and traditions that had shaped Portugal's rise as a unified and independent kingdom. Her wisdom and experience were sought after by nobles and clergy alike, who valued her counsel on matters of state and society. Despite her advancing age, Beatrice remained a steadfast supporter of the arts and culture. She continued to encourage literary and artistic pursuits, fostering an environment where creativity and intellectual exchange could thrive. Her support for these endeavors was not merely about patronage. It was a reflection of her belief that culture was a vital part of a kingdom's identity and strength. The flourishing of Portuguese literature and art during this period was a testament to her enduring influence. Beatrice's later years were marked by a quiet dignity. Having lived through the turbulence of dynastic politics, the challenges of governance, and the joys and sorrows of motherhood, She approached the twilight of her life with a sense of fulfillment. Her greatest legacy was not in the monuments she built or the battles she fought, but in the lives she shaped and the kingdom she helped to create. As Denis's reign entered its mature years, he often reflected on the lessons imparted by his mother. Beatriz's influence on his character, values, and leadership style was undeniable. Her emphasis on justice, compassion, and cultural enrichment had become hallmarks of his rule, shaping Portugal into a kingdom admired not just for its power but for its humanity. When Beatriz passed away, her death marked the end of an era for Portugal. Yet, her legacy lived on in the institutions she had supported, the alliances she had forged, and the family she had nurtured. Her life was a testament to the power of quiet strength and enduring vision, a reminder that true leadership is not always found in the spotlight, but often in the unseen acts of guidance and care that shape the course of history. The final years of Beatriz of Castile's life were marked by reflection, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to the kingdom she had embraced as her own. Though her active role in governance had diminished, her influence remained palpable, her presence a steadying force in the lives of her family and the Portuguese court. These years were not only a time of introspection for Beatriz, but also an opportunity to ensure her legacy would endure through the children she had nurtured and the kingdom she had helped shape. By the late 1270s, Beatriz had witnessed the transition of power from her husband, Afonso III, to her son Denis. While Denis had quickly proven himself a capable and visionary monarch, Beatriz's guidance continued to shape his decisions. Denis often sought his mother's counsel on matters of diplomacy, governance, and justice. He respected her deep understanding of the Iberian Peninsula's political complexities and her ability to navigate delicate situations with tact and grace. Beatriz's role in Denis's reign extended beyond advice. She became a quiet advocate for stability, urging her son to pursue policies that would strengthen the kingdom's foundations and protect its people. Her influence was evident in Denis's efforts to codify laws, protect the peasantry, and expand Portugal's cultural and economic horizons. While Denis's accomplishments were his own, they were undoubtedly shaped by the values instilled in him by his mother during his formative years. In her later years, Beatriz turned her attention to her grandchildren, eager to pass on the wisdom she had accumulated over a lifetime of political and personal experience. She saw in them the continuation of the dynasty she and Afonso had built, a lineage that would carry forward the traditions and ideals of their family. Beatriz took an active role in their education, emphasizing the importance of justice, compassion, and cultural appreciation, values she had imparted to Denis and now hoped to instill in the next generation. As Beatriz aged, her health began to decline. The physical toll of her responsibilities as queen, mother, and matriarch became more pronounced, but her spirit remained unyielding. Despite her frailty, she continued to serve as a source of wisdom and stability for those around her. Nobles, clergy, and commoners alike sought her advice and blessings, recognizing her as a figure of profound influence and grace. Beatriz's final years were also marked by her deepening faith. Her devotion to the Catholic Church, which had been a cornerstone of her life, grew even stronger as she prepared for her eventual passing. She spent much of her time in prayer, seeking solace and strength in her connection to God. Beatriz also continued her support for religious institutions, ensuring that her legacy would endure through the monasteries, churches, and charitable organizations she had championed throughout her life. One of her most poignant acts during this time was her involvement in the construction and restoration of religious buildings. Beatriz viewed these structures as more than places of worship. They were symbols of hope, resilience, and the enduring faith of the Portuguese people. Her contributions to these projects reflected her belief in the importance of leaving a tangible legacy, one that would inspire future generations to strive for spiritual and moral greatness. As her health worsened, Beatriz withdrew further from public life, focusing on her family and her spiritual journey. She found comfort in the knowledge that the kingdom she had helped to build was in capable hands. Under Denis's rule, Portugal continued to flourish, its borders secure, its people prosperous, and its culture thriving. Beatriz saw in her son's accomplishments the realization of the dreams she and Afonso had shared, a kingdom united in purpose and vision. When Beatriz passed away, likely in the early 1300s, her death was mourned across Portugal and Castile. She was remembered not only as a queen but as a unifier, a mentor, and a symbol of quiet strength. Her funeral was a solemn and dignified affair, attended by members of the royal family, the nobility, and representatives of the church. It was a testament to the profound respect and admiration she had earned throughout her life. In the years that followed her passing, Beatriz's legacy endured in countless ways. Her influence on Denis's reign ensured that Portugal would continue to thrive as a stable and prosperous kingdom. The cultural and religious institutions she had supported became lasting symbols of her commitment to faith and learning. Her role as a mother and mentor was celebrated in the stories and traditions passed down through the generations. Beatriz of Castile's final years were a culmination of a life dedicated to service, wisdom, and love. She had come to Portugal as a young girl, uncertain of what her future would hold, and had transformed herself into a queen whose influence shaped the destiny of a kingdom. Her life was a testament to the power of resilience, vision, and quiet determination, a legacy that would endure long after her time, etched into the heart of Portugal's history. The legacy of Beatriz of Castile was one of quiet, enduring influence, an example of how leadership and vision could shape the course of history without the need for fanfare or grand gestures. As the years turned into centuries, her contributions to Portugal's stability, culture, and governance became the bedrock upon which the kingdom's future was built. The life of Beatriz, though often overshadowed by the more dramatic events of her time, remains a testament to the power of steadfastness, wisdom, and faith. Denis I, her son and successor to Afonso III, carried forward many of the ideals and principles instilled in him by Beatriz. Under his reign, Portugal flourished both economically and culturally, becoming one of the most stable and prosperous kingdoms in medieval Europe. Denis's legal reforms, patronage of the arts, and attention to the welfare of his people all bore the unmistakable mark of his mother's influence. In every act of governance, Denis honored Beatriz's teachings, demonstrating that her vision for a just and prosperous kingdom had taken root. Beatriz's contributions were not confined to her son's reign. The institutions she helped establish and the values she championed endured far beyond her lifetime. The religious foundations she supported became centers of education, charity, and spiritual guidance for generations of Portuguese people. Her encouragement of cultural pursuits ensured that Portugal remained a hub of creativity and intellectual exchange, a legacy that would eventually pave the way for the age of exploration, when Portuguese sailors and thinkers would lead the world in discovery and innovation. In the decades following her death, Beatriz's memory was honored in various ways. Churches and monasteries she had patronized dedicated prayers and masses to her soul, recognizing her deep devotion to the church and her role in strengthening its presence in Portugal. Her descendants, inspired by her example, continued to promote justice, culture, and diplomacy, ensuring that the values she had lived by were carried forward. Among the most visible symbols of her legacy were the bonds she had forged between Portugal and Castile. While dynastic disputes and rivalries would inevitably resurface, the foundation of mutual respect and familial ties she helped create endured. The Treaty of Badajoz, which she had been instrumental in securing, remained a cornerstone of Iberian diplomacy, ensuring peace and cooperation during a crucial period of consolidation for both kingdoms. Beatriz's influence also resonated in the stories and traditions passed down through Portuguese society. She was remembered as a queen who embodied grace, wisdom, and compassion, a woman who quietly but decisively shaped the destiny of her kingdom. These stories, though often overshadowed by the exploits of her husband and son, served as a reminder of the vital role she played in Portugal's history. Her final resting place, likely in a monastery she had supported, became a site of quiet reverence. Pilgrims and visitors paid their respects, drawn by the memory of a queen whose life exemplified the virtues of faith, service, and humility. Her tomb, though simple compared to the grand monuments of her era, stood as a testament to a life lived with purpose and conviction. As Portugal moved into the later medieval period, the kingdom faced new challenges and opportunities. Yet, the foundations laid during Beatriz's time provided a stable platform for growth and resilience. Her legacy lived on not only in the policies and institutions she had influenced but also in the spirit of the Portuguese people, who drew strength from her example of quiet determination and unwavering faith. In the grand tapestry of history, Beatriz of Castile's life may not shine as brightly as those of warriors or conquerors, but her influence is woven deeply into the fabric of Portugal's story. She was a queen who understood that true power lay not in dominance but in compassion, not in force but in wisdom. Her legacy endures as a reminder that even the most understated acts of leadership can leave an indelible mark on the world. And so, Beatriz's story ends as it began, not with a flourish, but with a steadfast determination to build a better future. Her life was a gift to Portugal, and her legacy remains etched in the stone of its history, a quiet yet unshakable foundation for the greatness that would follow.